Oh, yes, sir. I was just saying that I did not hear what you said.
Yes, yeah, I took too much time. We said 11:30, and that is beyond time.
Yes, sir. We started, sir.
Okay, let's go ahead, brother. 17 following.
Yes, I will take from verse 16 because I think verse 16, uh, I choose it as the key verse of this chapter, sir. Verse
Okay,
16.
go ahead.
For if I preach the gospel, I have nothing to boast of, for necessity is laid upon me. Yes, who is me if I do not preach the gospel? The first question we must ask is why is so important to preach the gospel? And also we must ask what is the gospel? To understand and answer those questions, we must turn back from the book of Genesis, uh, where God created man and man sinned in the garden, and man were guilty of of his sin, and God punished man and put them to death. And then God see that man need to be saved. Man need a savior. And that's why he sent his son Jesus Christ to die on the cross, buried, and was resurrected. And the gospel that we have today is that God has sent his son on earth. He died, he buried, and was resurrected. That's why we are, that is for what? We are Christian today to defend that faith as Christian. Paul mentioned that the gospel were hiding in the Old Testament, and then by the power of Christ, it has been revealed to us. In the book of Colossians, Paul said that. And then
All
today
right,
we have the gospel. We have the gospel, and Christ said when he was
all
about
right,
to go to heaven.
brother.
Mhm.
We
Yes,
have a
sir.
limited time, so we have to do all the
Yes, sir. I
verses.
have the point.
So, so there are
Mhm.
some things that you know as well as I do, and Rasulin and the others. What we want to do is to extract the major thing from it. And here you've already extracted the major thing, which is the gospel and why it's important to saving
Mhm.
humanity. All right?
Yes, sir. And Christ said that we need to go out of the world and preach the gospel. And verse 17, for if I do this willingly, I have a reward. But if against my will, I've been entrusted with a stewardship. Paul said, and like in verse 15, it would better to die, it would better for me to die than that anyone should make my boasting void. It says that as Christians, we must have the will to preach the gospel. It is something that we must do, or something that we have responsibility to do every time in our life. That's what he said in verse 17. What is my reward then? That when I preach the gospel, I may praise the gospel of Christ without charge, that I may not abuse my authority in the gospel. Maybe it appeared that some of the uh, some of the member at that time, some of the men at that time, they go in a particular city and talk about the philosophy and take money from people. And those men were like pickpocket. And then Paul said, if I preach the gospel not to gain something from you, but to gain something more. We see that in verse 19. For though I am free from all men, I have made myself a servant to all, that I might win the more. Paul winning.
All right. I want you to look at your outline a little bit, and there's a distinction. He's simply drawing a distinction between what was optional for him, what he wanted, or what was an obligation. Remember, we're saying the will to do. Obligation, you don't have any choice. You're supposed to do it. Okay? So the obligation is to preach. And he didn't have any choice. All right? The option is whether or not he support himself or the church there support him. I wanted to get that.
Yes, sir.
Because he looked at himself as a steward. And a steward doesn't really put in there, you know, receive pay. A steward receive no pay. A steward is like a slave. Just do what is told. Just take care of his master's business. All right? So the obligation and also the choice.
To preach.
I want that to kind of get in properly so you can fully grasp the truth. Where it says, what is my reward? In verse 18. All right, because you're going to run into verse 18 soon. Go ahead, brother Israel.
Yes. Said, what is my reward then? And it is my, I think he said, he think that his reward is to get to heaven, to go to heaven.
All right, you're kind of low. Turn the volume up. But...
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm here.
Okay.
Am I clear now, sir?
Yeah, a lot clear.
And then verse 20. And to the Jews I became as a Jew, that I might.
How did you write the 20?
Yeah. Yes, I talk about 19 already, sir. That he said, if I do that, not because I have a notion, but to gain more about, all right, we'll have a better understanding in verse 20. I show that. Yeah. To the Jews I became as a Jew, that I might win Jews. To those who are under the law, as under the law, that I might win those who are under the law. Sir, I have a difficulty to understand those passages, sir, those verses, but I will try my best to explain them.
All right. Where are you having difficulty?
All right. In verse 20 and 21.
Okay. All right. Let's look at our outline. I could go ahead and say something, but look at your outline and see what's pulling out. It says how far Paul was willing to go into his regard is recorded in Acts chapter 21, 18 to 27. Again, he did not accommodate himself to sin or to error, but to social customs. There are certain customs that the Jews had, like washing hands and all that. You know, if you're amongst them, you better wash your hands, don't?
Yes, sir.
You know, if you're going to be able to reach them. So he says, listen, now to them I become this. You know, and if you can remember in Acts that he actually shaved his head, you remember?
Yes, sir.
All right, you did that. And that was not as a religious rite, but it was to accommodate
Yes,
his
sir.
social setting so that he did not cause trouble among the Jews. So to the Jews, he did this, right? To them that are without law, as without law, he goes on to explain that he does not intend to say that he was antinomian and that is against law. He is not saying that, right? He wasn't an antinomian, one that is against law. He was certainly under the law of Christ. What he has in mind are the Gentiles and the extent to which he is willing to go to win this. He is willing to give up. It's like, for example, if you remember, we in chapter 8, we talk about if meat cause my brother to stumble, I will not eat meat anymore. You remember?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Roman, turn up the volume.
Well, our volume is up, sir. I'm not sure. It's probably a problem with the mic, sir. The
Okay,
globe,
maybe it's my mic or something. Okay.
because we have it in our hand.
Oh, so the
Yes,
mic
sir.
is giving a little trouble. But he will go to any extent to please and to win a soul. So it says in chapter 8 that we would have done, if meat cause my brother to stumble, I will eat meat no more.
Yes, sir.
Huh?
Yes,
Because the
sir.
soul of my brother is more important than meat.
Yes, sir.
So when it says to the Jews, I become a Jew, then it says, I am made all things to all men, that I might by all means save some. This is not going contrary to the written word. This is choice again, don't?
Yes, sir.
Right? That I may win some. I am willing to concede Christian liberty at all points if in the process the gospel is preached and the lost are won. This implies willingness to do more, not less than the law requires. It certainly does not condone sinful activities and compromise in order to win. So it is not the idea that he's going to sin, he's going to break the law to do this. He is setting himself in a place to be able to deal with individual at their level where it does not cause sin. And the premise that we started out with, and this is repetition, if meat cause my brother to stumble, I will eat meat no more. You have the right not to, and you have the right to eat.
Yes, sir.
Does that help a little, brother Israel?
All right. That Paul is saying here that basically Paul was a Jew, sir. Paul was a Jew, and he said that among the Jew, I behave like a Jew to do what? To win the Jew. That's what it says, sir.
Yes, he fit himself in the situation once it doesn't go contrary to the will of God.
All right.
Choice, the liberty, the freedom to do this. With the Gentiles, here is this. Because of their social standing.
Okay.
You know, for example, I think this might be a good one. You know, if and when I go to 80, there are certain things that you practice that I might not practice, don't?
Yes, sir.
You know, one that stands out a lot, and I've used it an illustration already. You know, cats. All right, you don't eat it, but other Asian eat. You know, but if you go to a personal house, you might end up after what?
Trouble
Eat
your
it so that it doesn't cause disturbance, eh?
Yes,
Because
sir.
they're eating it, it might not kill them,
Yes, sir.
and it not gonna kill you. So you
Yes, sir.
adjust yourself to the situation so that it doesn't totally turn off the person. If it doesn't go contrary to the will of God,
Yes, sir.
because it is not sinful to eat cats, right?
Yes, sir. Right.
Right? You know, in Trinidad they eat monkeys. I don't know if they do that in Haiti, but in Trinidad they eat monkeys. Well, we don't here. We don't know because we get meat sometimes from Trinidad and things, so we don't know what it is. But we won't go and catch one. I hope you get what I'm saying.
Yes, I do.
All right, good. Go ahead, Brother Israel. I know time is running down.
Yes, sir. In verse 21, to those who are without law, as without law, not being without law toward God, but under the law toward Christ, that I
Mhm.
might win those who are without law. Does it say that Paul abolished the law of God or the one of Christ?
All right. Remember, now, is the apostle to the Gentiles. Remember that. Now, we doesn't take one of the laws of the Old Testament casually. One law was that you offer animal sacrifices, don't?
Yes, sir.
All right, under the law of Christ, there's no way that it says that you must offer animal sacrifice. All right, back in chapter 8, the sacrifice that was offered to idols was considered to be what? Sinful if you eat it, don't?
Yes, sir.
Well, Paul, you remember what Paul says? The idol is nothing, there's just one true God, so there's nothing wrong in eating it. But
Yes,
if it's
sir.
going to cause
Your
the
blood.
weak to stumble, you keep away from it.
Yes,
It's
sir.
not breaking the law of God to please men, because doing so you will be displeasing God, which is a greater authority.
Sir.
Okay, sir?
Yes, sir. Mhm.
All right, continue.
Yes. As a summary, he said in verse 20, to the Jews I became a Jew, and to those who are without law, I became the one without law. That's what he said. I might win those who are without law. Verse 22, to the weak I became as weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all men, that I might by all men save some.
Mm-hmm.
All right. This statement, Paul says that I will choose to take everyone's place, to put myself in the position to win them in order to lead them to believe in the gospel or to have salvation. Do you understand me, sir?
I'm hearing you.
Mhm. Am I right?
Right, he's going to go to the extent, whatsoever it is, once it is liberty. That's what we want to bear in mind, because that is the subject under consideration. Christian liberty. All right?
Yes.
So Christians have the right to do and not to do certain things, right?
Yes, sir.
Paul is saying, I will refrain from doing certain things if it will cause someone to respond positively to the gospel of Christ, because the gospel of Christ is the most important thing. All right?
Yes, sir.
All right, go ahead.
Now this I do for the gospel's sake, that I may be partaker of it with you. What is the aim of the gospel? Is to lead us to Christ and to have salvation. And Paul said that I do this for the gospel's sake, that at the end of the day, I may be partaker of it with you. In verse 24, do you not know that those who won in race all won, but one received the prize, one in such a way that you may obtain it. All right.
All right, to get the gist of this, older brother,
Yes.
and let's go back to our notes. Verse 24. Paul draw upon a scenery very familiar to the Corinthians. In order to drive home his point, the Olympics game, the athletics event known to all of his readers, held on the alternate summer within the vicinity of Corinth. He's using this because they knew about the Olympics game. Right? And he's saying now, every person who enters the what? Win. You ever hear anyone going to run and they say, I want to lose? No. So Paul says, no, we must run that we may obtain, that we may receive the prize. There was no legal compulsion with demands that the runner strive to attain the crown. Why then do they run? They run because they're athletes. And this is what they are, therefore, to achieve their final objective. It is to look and to make the sacrifice on all parts. So it is a choice. It is a thing to do. You run or you don't run, don't.
Yes, sir.
So you can actually refrain from doing what is not against God's law. Right?
Yes, sir.
For example, look at I know the giving, we talk about giving, this should not be out of compulsion. You know that text, right? When you give, it should not be out of necessity.
First Corinthians 16, sir.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, target.
Yes, sir.
But it is a thing you do willingly.
Yes, sir.
As you, and I think you have said it already, that nobody can force you to give $10 or 20, because God don't accept that. He accepts what you decide to give.
Yes, sir.
Not what somebody tell you that you must give this and that and that. No, you decide to give 5, 10, 15, 20, or $100,000. You decide that. No one. That is your will. Your right. Your liberty
Yes, sir.
to do. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. And everyone who competes for the prize is temperate in all things. Now they do it to obtain a perishable crown, but we for an imperishable crown. It means there, because I said already, the purpose of the gospel is to bring us to Christ. It take the example of verse 24 as a metaphoric figure to show that in a wind, every person, uh, how can I say that? Could we? One, yes, every person one, and each person must have in the mind or the goal must to receive the Greek prize. And then Paul said in verse 25 that the thing that they receive, it is a perishable crown. But we as Christians, you take the example for us as Christians, we must want to obtain the crown of life, which is not perishable. Therefore, in verse 26, I warn thus, not with uncertainty, thus I fight not as one who beats the air, but I discipline my body and bring it into subjection, lest when I have preached to others, I myself should become disqualified. I don't want to give a wrong interpretation onto that, but the whole idea is what Paul trying to say to the Colossian that
Corinthians.
Corinthian, that Jesus Christ has chosen as an apostle, and he is an apostle. And Paul said he chose to do the will of God, not because he wants something from them, but because he wants to win something, which is the crown of life. And in verse 17,
All right, just hold there. Let's see if Brother Solon have anything he wants to add to this.
Yes. What Paul is basically saying here is that he mortified his flesh. He put his body under control so that he may maintain a good reputation. Because if, as a preacher, you have bad reputation, you will be disqualified. And because of Paul's reputation, he had said in one of the previous verse that he has been entrusted with a stewardship. So God gave him this responsibility to preach the gospel, but he must maintain the qualification to be able to continue doing that particular job that he got from the Almighty God.
All right. Okay, brother is continue.
I have nothing more to say, sir, but I think all is clear, sir.
All right, you have 26. And 27.
All right. So, what? For what, sir?
You should continue with 26 and 27.
That's correct.
Yes. Paul said, therefore, I warn those not with uncertainty. Thus I fight not as one who beat the air. Is basically saying here that he know what he's doing, not someone that is foolish. You understand, sir?
Uh-huh.
So he knows what he's doing. So God given this beautiful job, and he wants to make it in a godly manner, in a divine or a godly way. And in verse 17, Paul, even though as mentioned in other passages in 27, he mentioned in other passages that he has some other things that he used to practice, like he was a carpenter or
A
nothing
tent maker.
a tape maker, yes, that he used to do tape for people that he may win some money. You see that Paul give himself to the gospel, not to gain something from men, but to gain something from the Almighty. And all this work will be uh, all this work will be we may see, and then all this will be, yeah, the reward. Will be reward at the end of the day. That's all I want to say.
All
Okay.
right, sir. I'd like to say something.
Go ahead.
Yes, I've spoken already about verse 27, but I did it roughly. But if we would like to look at it deeper, it's like Paul is giving a conclusion of most of the thing that he had said earlier. Because when he said that he put himself or his body into subjection, is that not only about, controlling himself from doing sin, but he's also talking about, like his appetites, and he's talking like about the fact that he denies himself for the preaching of the gospel, because if it was for the money of the congregation, as Paul said, he would have preferred to die lest they shall take away his glory. So this is the reason why here he said, I put or I discipline my body and bring it into subjection, lest when I've preached to others, which means less when I go to others to preach, I myself should become disqualified. So people won't, take him serious. They would say, is it not the one who, who is always seeking for money and stuff? They would say all type of things to him or concerning him that would avoid him to be efficient in his preaching. So all these things would affect his reputation. So he won't be able no more to be considered as a powerful preacher.
Okay. All right. So the overall trust I want you to keep in mind is that sometimes, talking about liberty, freedom, and all that, sometimes the mature Christian will have to restrict himself in order to accomplish the ultimate task, which, as Israel would have said, is the gospel. So
Yes,
you have to
sir.
restrict yourself. so you can accomplish the ultimate task. It's like, for example, sometimes you have to restrict the amount of sleep you get so that you can finish your assignment. Don't.
Yes, sir.
But no one can make you do it unless you want to do it. So you have the freedom,
yes, sir,
to do so. Okay, I know time is running down. I want to tell you that liberty has not finished. All right?
Okay,
Chapter
sir.
10 gonna teach and the practice of liberty. Chapter 11 gonna go right into it as practice of liberty. So I'm gonna ask you all again, so that because we're not in class, to do some assignment. Let I get my thing right.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna ask this time Israel to do the first 15 verses,
Yes, sir.
and then Solin gonna do the remaining verses. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Then I want to get you starting on your paper, and this will be your final exam. I want to do a paper on chapter 14, 15, and 16.
14, 15, and 16.
Yes, and I want you to, it's really a research paper, so you don't think that you're gonna have to list your sources, where you get your information from. The history, all right, so that is chapter 14, 15, and 16. It's a good bit. So start working on that paper.
All right, sir. The research would be about what exactly? Like, what is the topic or the subject?
The subject, the condition under which it was written, to whom it was written, those particular verses, and the application of it to our time.
Okay, sir. 14, 15.
So you can go to commentaries to read and tell what commentaries and possibly the page that you pick up the idea. And when it is quotation from the author, you give credence to them.
All right, sir.
Because these are 3 chapters that are very, very important.
Yes, sir.
But we'll talk more about it. You can ask questions about it, during the course of study. What questions or comments do you have before we give leeway to class?
I don't have any, sir.
I'm not hearing.
Oh, I was saying that I don't have any, sir.
Okay. Brother Ian,
Yes, sir.
what questions or comments do you have to close class?
I don't think I have a comment, sir.
All right. Okay, well,
All right.
brother,
I have a problem, sir, not a comment, not a question, sir. And sometimes it's a little bit difficult for me to interpret those passages, sir, and understand them.
That's the reason you have to go in the library and search and read.
Yes,
All
sir.
right.
Yes, sir.
All right. Quickly, what have you learned today? Just tell me what are two things you have learned.
All right. For me, the day that God chose me to do His work, I decided to obey willingly to do His work. Now, He gave me the authority to set up the things or fix up the things in His church and to continue to preach the gospel. No matter what I will face in the future, I know how to deal with it, sir. Like Paul, when he found many men in the church was questioning about his apostleship, and he wrote them this letter to tell them that Jesus Christ gave him the power to be, or give him the opportunity to be an apostle. And today, they must respect him as an apostle of God. And he's not doing this to gain money. But, in fact, he's a tenter maker. He about his life, he work to gain something to feed himself or to feed in his family. He don't want anything from them. If they want to support him, no problem. But he don't want anything from them. So by that, we should know that as preacher, we should have something aside that we can do for ourselves for tomorrow, that we don't have our whole hope upon the church or get all our support from the church.
But the lesson though that they are obligated to, but you are the choice not to. All right.
Yes. Yes.
They are obligated to because of the natural illustrations that Paul would have used. Yeah. Laws of nature. You plant, you eat. Huh?
Yes, sir.
All right. Brother Solen, one thing that you have learned today that is meaningful to you.
Yes, sir. It is the fact that we as Christians we have right, but we may choose, to make use of this right or not to make use of them. It depends if it is not going to affect, the soul of a brother or another member of the church. We may not do it if it's going to affect them or draw them into committing sin. But other than that, if we would like to, we can make use of the right that we have as Christians. And we would have seen that throughout the study that we have done today. For those that are preaching the gospel, they should live by the gospel. But if it happens that, you know, they don't receive anything as support, they must not, complain about it, but just continue to do the work of the world of the Lord rightfully.
Good. Thank you very much for your thoughts. And we hope that you will go over. This is not the end of it. This is just to stimulate your mind to think and to go and do your own search.
Yes,
Over.
sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
You all have a good week now and keep safe
All right, brother. Same to you.
All right. Bye now.
Yes, sir. Bye.